We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bellet. Welcome back to the BraveCo podcast, BraveCo men. This week, we have one of the best men on the planet today. And I'm not joking when I say that. This is literally one of the best men that I know. And his name's Jedediah Thurner. Jedediah and I have been friends, not actually for a long time, but I consider him one of my deepest friends, a guy that I care a lot about. And I always say this every week, like I bring guys on here that I know will inspire other men, that I know other men can look at and go, man, I want to model some of my life after how they live. And Jedediah is 100% one of those men. But not only that, I mean, the guys that you run with, that you've partnered with, which we'll talk about that in a little bit, are those men as well. So, Jed, it's an honor to have you. Just to give people just a little bit of who you are, you serve as the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Love Has No Limits. And we're going to talk about Love Has No Limits, and we're going to talk about your life. But first, bro, thank you so much for literally carving time out to jump on our podcast. It means a lot, man.
Man, it is an honor to be with you and to be with this incredible community and all of the men that are tuning in, and really don't know where to go from here with such a high praise introduction. But I love you, man. It has been a privilege getting to know who you are. And obviously this podcast and what BraveCo becomes a manifestation of what I think I really fell in love about you is your desire to help men and to step into a fight. And it's hard in this era to be a man, and what you're doing is unbelievable. And that's why I'm honored to just spend time with this community, be honest, transparent, and vulnerable, and hope something we talk about will give someone inspiration to live another day, to take courage, to try something they haven't, to overcome a habit, to find freedom. And I'm just honored to serve.
When we first met, I was trying to figure out how to follow the prophetic word that was given to us, right? And do this event, or do some kind of men's event in LA and at some unknown Coliseum. And like, literally that's what following the prophetic is like. And you know that because you guys do the same thing, right? So we'd had this series of prophetic words that was really random. It was, I see a bunch of men and they're coming out of their homes or filling the stadiums. And it's like in 2020 and LA Coliseum or a Coliseum like that. And it's just like, man, following the prophetic's the craziest thing. But so I'd called Chris Overstreet just to talk through it. And he said, call Jedediah. So I called Jedediah, and dude, like right away, I just felt like, gosh, dude, I felt like I'd found a brother, like a guy that I had known my whole entire life, but have never even known. And dude, you guys right away, like I started to share the prophetic word and just kind of the journey and the dream of like helping men. And dude, I didn't even know what I was doing. I still don't hardly know what I'm doing. It just feels like that. But you and your team right away were like, dude, you got to fly down here and meet with us and hang out, and let's dream about what's in your heart, and let's dream about what it would look like to touch men. And that was the beginning of just such a cool relationship, and honestly, a prophetic word fulfilled. Like I could literally say to today that like these random words that got put together were fulfilled through your guys' relationship with me. And dude, it's awesome, man. I love history. I love how God creates history with people and puts people together. And so, man, we're not here to talk about me, but it's just so cool because I think what God really wants to do on the earth, let me just start here. What God wants to do on the earth is he wants to bring transformation, right? He wants to bring reconciliation. He wants to make all things new. And And he created, he's raised up and he's raising up people who will be a catalyst unto change. And the Lord has done that all throughout history. If you look through biblical history, God has raised up different different judges. He's raised up different people that have been catalysts, the Nehemiahs, the Josephs, the Moseses, right, who come in and are a catalyst to an entire movement to bring real change. In men, in case you haven't noticed, what our world needs today is massive change, a massive encounter. It needs the pure love of God, a real tangible, I think now I'm preaching, sorry, but I'll stop in a second. I'm going to ask a question. I'm trying to set this up.
I love it.
Because what the church has traditionally tried to do is the church has done a great job at teaching. We've done a great job at preaching, but it hasn't always been tangible. It hasn't always been really super practical. And my years of counseling tells me that people come in to my office and all they've tried for years is prayer. I've been praying about it. I've been trying to bring this God. I've been trying to you got to nail it to the cross. You've got to just keep forgiving. And it's because we teach that, which isn't there is a way to bring things to God, and there is a way to nail something to the cross, but we don't teach how to do that, right? And how to be the practical hands and feet of God to a generation. And honestly, if we look at where we're at today as a nation, where we're at today as nations in the world, we can clearly see that our model hasn't worked well, and there's room to grow, right? There's massive amounts of room to grow. And what you guys, Jed, have begun to pioneer is so freaking epic and so catalytic that it's pretty incredible. I want you to talk a little bit about Love Has No Limits. And we'll talk about, the event that we partnered at in LA, but you guys also did one in Houston this last year. And then, it's a model that's going to continue on. But I want you to talk about Love Has No Limits in one, why you named your organization Love Has No Limits, but also what is the vision behind that? Because I honestly think that it's a brand new, in my mind, it's a brand new model to touching the world in a way that hasn't been done, that I haven't seen.
Man, there's so much you said there. And I am excited about just looking at our history and how faithful God's been. And obviously the reason why people are listening today, I pray, is you've come to the reality that you need someone else. You need community, you need connection, you need accountability, you need a brother, you need a friend, you need a mentor, you need a coach. At the end of the day, we all know we were not wired to do life alone, although as a male and as a men, often in our makeup, we think we can do it all alone. We don't read instructions, we don't ask for directions, and we definitely don't ask for help. We're anti-counseling, we're anti-therapy. For some reason, we think that when we ask for help, it's a sign of weakness instead of a sign of wisdom. And so I just want to encourage everyone, first of all, that's tuning in, that is taking time to invest in yourself, because you said, I need a real connection. I need community. I need to actually not just pray, right? Not just pray, please pray, but I need to not just pray. I need a playbook. I need a strategy. I need a way to do this. And so I love what we're doing here. And man, you said a lot about, I think a better way to lead into what we're doing. Cause I'm privileged to talk about it, but obviously I'm so much else I want to serve this community that's listening with. But I think what I loved is, even in the context, hey, are we simply going to pray, or are we actually going to have a playbook or a strategy? I think when we think about bringing transformation, which is that audacious idea that you implemented, when I look throughout a lot of history or the churches I grew up in, the plan was to pray. I mean, I grew up in an environment where it was like, hey, we're going to have revival. How? We're going to pray. What's going to happen? Revival. How? We're going to have it. What's going to happen? We're going to take over the nation. Yeah. What are we going to do? Pray. Revival. And it was like, where's the strategy, right? And for us, we would always say strategy is our diligence, but not our dependence. Strategy is us stewarding in the natural what God's revealed to us in the supernatural. But if I'm being honest, our dependence is on a miracle. It's on God showing up. It's on God making a way. It's on the God of the breakthrough, delivering or healing or restoring or reconciling. But strategy is actually stewardship. And when you said, when you looked at the church and the state of the church, and I'm going to be delicate when I talk about something that's so dear to God, right? There's enough people attacking. There's enough friendly fire out there anyways that you don't need another voice, just walking through all of the things the church hasn't done. But when we look at the stats, you're probably right in this, Jason, is that the church for potentially, and I would say let's consider this, for potentially God's divine design is not happening at scale. Now, what churches are doing successfully are gathering people to create community around spiritual development and in many cases, spiritual discipleship. What the church is probably not doing at scale is gathering people to be activated as believers that are fulfilling the Great Commission by living out the Great Commandment at scale. It's probably not doing that. And then, of course, if you look at the data tells us that, in the last 10 years, when we think about church growth in America, only 10% of that is new conversion growth. So when you actually say, look at the churches and the sizes, actually, it's just people going from average churches to better churches, from small programs to bigger programs, from religious mindsets to slightly freer mindsets. But at the end of the day, we're not reaching the lost. And then I can be really honest, we're not resonating and reaching the next generation. And Gen Z was polled last year. And the question was, what would it take for you to have a conversation with a Christian, with a believer?
Wow.
70% came back, Jason. 70% said, I would be willing to have a conversation with a Christian with two things in place. One, I would not feel judged. Number two, I would not be invited to a church. I would not be invited to an institution. So at the end of the day, we have the state of the church, which is basically probably not fulfilling at scale, at its full capacity, its potential, which is more than just building beautiful buildings, gathering incredible people, spiritually feeding them to live incredible lives. That's not what Jesus came to start up. And so when you think about when we came into the conversation in America, when we looked at the church and obviously saw these stats, and looked at the churches and cities and communities, what we would call faith communities, not only do we see diversity, not only do we see a difference of thought, drastic religions, different sizes, different styles, different methods, different models. What we do see, Jason, and this leads to, I think what you're asking, what we do see is the best position institution on the planet when functioning properly to transform not only a life, but actually transform a city. We actually, when we look at faith communities in America, we see an unempowered, unconnected energy grid. Very similar to what Solar City was to Tesla. For anyone who's followed that journey, I love Elon because he's a disruptor. That's what I love about him. He's disrupting industry, building new industries. When Elon was creating the Tesla, he first had to invest and raise billions of dollars of capital into Solar City, buy land, develop infrastructure, create technology, harness the sun, right? So that he could plug this one vehicle in called a Tesla across America. And that's how we see faith communities in our cities. But the good news is we don't have to raise billions of dollars. We don't have to buy land. We don't have to build building. We don't have to hire staff. We don't need to create a culture with a shared vision and a shared value called loving your neighbor. That's in pretty much every religion. And the ones that loving your neighbor are not in, those are probably the weird ones. But there's, right, let's just be honest. If the loving people is not in it, I would suggest something else. But that it's strategically appreciated. It's just never been turned on to where it can make the greatest difference and really connected to each other. So when we think about Love Has No Limits, in America, Love Has No Limits at face value is a city-based movement that activates hundreds of faith communities alongside hundreds of businesses, alongside, hundreds of NGOs, with tens of thousands of volunteers and tier one influencers to unite with anyone to do good and no one to do wrong, to serve and solve the greatest problems facing our cities and facing our communities. And when Love Has No Limits is on full display, it is literally a manifestation of what Frederick Douglass would say, being willing to unite with anyone to do good and no one to do wrong. And when we think about turning this energy grid on the few cities that we've been in, right? We've been in LA, we've been in Houston, we have 10-year commitments to the cities, and now we're in Miami. When you think about some of the impacts, like the early evidence of the power of this unempowered, unconnected energy grid, in all of these campaigns, I think we eradicated It's about 63 million in medical debt for 43,000 families. Through our faith communities, the heroes of the campaign, Love Has No Limits, just everyone listening, we're not the hope. We're simply the help. We're not the hero. We're just one of the many guides. And everything we want to do is to stand behind, beside, and beneath pastors, faith leaders, best-in-class churches, community champions to add scope and scale and sustainability. So as I share these stats, it doesn't mean, one, we figured anything out. It just means God's been faithful. And I'm not talking about the movement. I'm talking about the community champions within the movement that are actually making this happen every day. So through those faith communities, what is 2,500 families stepped up to foster and adopt. Jason, that was the largest recruitment campaign in the history of LA County. We were able in these campaigns, we give $10 million of goods in kind, beds, cribs, dressers, refrigerators, car seats, basic necessities that so many families in poverty don't have. We gave $5 million in free mental health therapy. You got 4 sessions at no cost in the convenience of your own home. We're able in this campaign to activate 40,000 volunteers in both cities, united with anyone to do good and no one to do wrong. What's amazing about these 40,000 volunteers that were part of Back to School Bashes, beautification project, dental clinics, medical clinics, distributing eyeglasses, out of our 40,000 volunteers, 79% said this was our largest, 79% said this is my first time volunteering ever. Wow. 90% of our churches said this was our largest community outreach to date. And 48% of our volunteers said they had no connection to a faith community.
Let me slow you down.
Our model,
bro, let me slow you down.
Sorry.
Because here's what I should have warned people about in the very beginning. I should have said, get a notepad and a pen, because you're going to hear more incredible one-liners than you've heard in a very long time, because Jedediah you are the anointed carrier of one-liners and putting those things together. It's true, man. You have such a gift for it. But 2, your mind is incredible, and your ability to just offload and paint a picture of what's happening is phenomenal. Basically, you guys, to like make this more tangible, you guys create a strategy for a city. And the real question is, and forgive me if I'm wrong, or correct me if I'm wrong, the question that you're asking yourself is, how do we come in and love this city well and bring transformation, tangible transformation to this city? A really great example of that is during COVID, like when everyone's locked down, right? Everyone's running for the hills. Everyone's like, not even going out on their boat because they don't want to get fined for being on the water. You guys are strategizing. How do we take a risk in COVID without knowing if people are going to be able to get out of their homes, without knowing if people are going to serve? Like, I want to paint the level of courage and risk that you guys took. How do we take a massive risk, fundraise, plan, put in tons of hours of effort and energy to infiltrate this city? Now, here's the important thing, and I'm breaking it down like this, I think, because I really want guys to grasp this. If I wasn't here talking about this, most people don't even know that you guys exist. Even the people who are serving. That's the genius behind all of this is, and that's what Jedediah was trying to share, which I'm sure that most guys missed, is this organization, Love Has No Limits, is not in it for their own glory. They're literally in it to pull together, right? You guys are a catalyst between these groups coming together with a shared vision of what they already want to do. Everybody in the city wants to see homeless people get touched. Everybody in the city wants to see people get fed. Everybody in the city wants to see debt decrease from poverty. Everybody in the city wants to see the mentally ill get help, right? So you go, okay, we all agree on loving somebody the way that you want to be loved. Put religion aside, right? Like, religion's fine, but we're not here to argue about how to get to God and how to get to Jesus, although there's a place for that. What we want to do is do what we can practically, tangibly do, and rally a city around a vision to practically serve one another in a way that brings freedom to the individual, honor and glory to God, and where no one person, no one entity gets all the credit for it.
That's right. That's right.
That's freaking awesome. That's genius, because if you can love and do incredible things without needing the credit, what can we not solve? What can we not do? I mean, it's the whole, and I'll tell you guys this like firsthand. So I know it sounds like maybe I'm bromancing Jedediah here a little bit. But honestly, I'm just so impressed, because I can tell you 100%, like when Jedediah and Dominic and Gabe and the guys, when they heard the vision of BraveCo, they literally said, okay, well, how can we help? Right? We have this event already planned, and why don't we do something for the men? And you guys brought in TD Jakes, you guys set up the event, you did all that stuff. Didn't cost me a dime, like literally didn't cost me a dime. You helped to pilot a 30-day challenge. You rallied all of your friends, your influencers, to make a 5-minute video for us, which I don't know if anybody's tried to get people to stop and make a 5-minute video. It's friggin' hard. Like, it's hard. You guys rallied all of that, and not one time did you ask for any credit. Not one time. Like, that's not what it was about. And the thing is like, to me, this is part of the new model. Like, if our government would do this, if our government would not care about taking any credit and just set up people for success, what could we not accomplish? And so I know I kind of stopped you a little bit from telling and sharing the vision, but I just wanted to make it clear, like, this is actually why it's working, is because what we've all been waiting for is for someone to come in and bring administration and vision without getting in the way of needing the credit. And if you can keep your hand out of the purse, right? If you don't have to personally benefit from it, then everybody trusts you. And when everybody trusts you, you get the keys to the city, and everyone is saying yes. So that's actually what's happening. Okay.
I love that. No, and let's just drill down on some takeaways for those that have tuned in, because you said a lot there. I think, you talked about the risks, and I think when we think about what we did in America, because we were spending a lot of time in developing nations and still have a pretty significant footprint in many countries, most people would say, hey, what would you do if you couldn't fail? Like, people's big ideas come in the context of safety, not extreme risk.
Yeah,
think about it.
It's true.
Like, how big would you go with a safety net?
Yeah.
How high would you jump with a parachute? Like, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And the question we've asked ourselves, I think every man, every person should be asking yourselves, is not what you do when you couldn't fail. What must you do that is worth failing for? What must be tried? What must be attempted? Which must be pioneered? What must be plowed? What business must be created? Which tech must be developed? What type of man must show up in that home with their kids? Like, what would you do that is actually worth failing for? And to be honest, LA and what you were a part of and we were a part of in that men's event too, that was the heart behind it. It was not about, guys, how big would we go if failure wasn't an option? No, how big would we go to fail in front of anyone, that we actually had to try to reach people that aren't being reached, to activate people that aren't being activated, and actually to see way more of heaven actually come to this earth. That was the manifestations of it. So I love it. And I do think you said something, our heart, we are the antithesis of credit. Like, I do not care. We do not care. The journey, the joy of our journey is what you just said. We have people all over the world that goes, I never knew that was you guys. I thought that was them, or I thought it was their event. And I go, that's the point. The point is, man, if we're not making this about a man or about a band or about a moment, this is about a mandate, and this is about a movement, and this is about a mission. Like, this is not about an individual human being. And no matter what sphere of life you're in, what I've learned is that when you want credit or control, you ruin the viral nature of anything. So when you think about what God's doing through this movement, he's doing in every person listening, he wants it to be viral. He wants it to be contagious. He wants your ideas to be viral and contagious, your businesses to be viral and contagious. Everything God does is at a crazy pace of scale. He had a plan to change the world, not just to change lives. But the moment you go, I want credit, I want control, we actually slow down and remove the attractiveness around anything that has the potential to being viral. Guess what? Even the message of the love of Jesus, I want credit, I want control. You're actually reducing the viral nature of that message.
Bro, can I add something to
and so
that?
I think, yeah.
Because
please.
when you see Jesus's ministry, right? Like, how many times did Jesus do a miracle and say, "Don't tell anybody"? And how many times was Jesus, like, Jesus's his main message is, "This is not my will. I'm not going around doing what I want to do," right? Like, I'm on a mission, commissioned by God to fulfill his will, his goal, his desires, what he wants to do. And if I'm honest, like, man, that's a really tough thing to do. That's because we're working against our own, in some sense, our own selfish desires to, like, I want to feel successful, and success is in the notoriety for a lot of us. Right. And I'm being honest, even saying myself, like, I am not immune to wanting credit. I'm not immune to, like, that was Satan's downfall, wasn't it? Is he has everything he wants, except for he wants to be the one given credit. And therefore that's his ultimate demise. Like, can you talk a little bit about how do you guys manage that, bro, on this level? Like, how do you guys surely had to talk about it and create a core value around it as a team? Like, how do you manage that?
Great questions, right? It's daily. I think, we knew we couldn't ask organizations, businesses, faith communities, individuals to set aside their logos, their labels, and egos to unite with something bigger than themselves if we couldn't first model it. Right. I think what I'd also know is I was an arrogant jerk, Jason. I was a scholarship athlete, played college football. I was the, quintessential jock in every form and fashion, even to the point where I act ignorant and stupid, although I graduated with really high honors and a couple years of academic All-Americans, and the team laughed. And they literally were like, wait, you don't get good grades. You're just a big old meathead, because I acted like one and I bodied it. Yeah. And I grew up in a world that if I didn't win, I didn't get recognized. Mm-hmm. I didn't know this till later. So by default, not by design, I had to help a lot of people lose so I could win. That's what I was doing. And God and my wife early on, I think my first year of marriage, spent about a year just dismantling and breaking down. And everyone's invited listening to be on the journey of eradicating my life from pride. Here's what you need to know about that desire to be known or get credit. And really, it's that ego-driven, prideful mentality. The Bible would tell us, for those that, are considering that as an authority, the Bible would tell us that God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Now, in some translation, Jason, it says God opposes. I want people to get that. God opposes. That means God is in opposition to prideful people. As much as his grace and love and everything wants to run in, as he still loves you, he cannot function with pride, because pride is actually a God repellent. It's like literally reducing God to a mosquito and spraying your body with off, and he can't get in and actually penetrate anything. And we just learned quickly on, I know this every day, that what we're doing cannot be done within our own strength, gifting, skill set, capacity, capability. Man, it stinking requires God. So I don't have the ability to let something in my life that would cause him to oppose me, to actually not be on the same team, to not be an ally, for all the things that we need to do. So you have to reduce that. I also think, the challenge for us, like when you even think about what we're doing in a city, we realize that when you actually, Jesus shows up 2,000 years ago, if he's our model, and says the highest level of leading is serving. He actually says it. The greatest of all is the servant of all. So he actually shows the posture. The highest level of leading is the lowest position of serving, which means when an individual, business, a church is reintroduced to the community as the chief servant on an issue, on a cause, on a crisis, it by default and design actually becomes the chief leader on that issue. That's actually the version of leading. And when we realize is that when you serve, it could be in any space. When you serve your business, your ideas, your company, your faith community, your ministry, when you serve your community well, you become irresistible. But when you solve a problem through service, you actually become irreplaceable.
Wow.
You provide so much value that you can't be removed. And I think the thing that I've probably, I just believe, the humility is a position of strength.
Hold on.
The lower you
hold
go,
on
the
one
more,
sec.
Go ahead.
I know I'm cutting you off, and people are going to be like, gosh, quit cutting him off. But I want to go back to what you just said a second ago, because You said that when you serve your community, you become, say,
Irresistible.
irresistible.
Serve your community well, you become irresistible. But when you solve a problem through service, you become irreplaceable.
Oh, that's profound. That's really profound.
And it's in years, I didn't realize, like, there's a lot of stuff we just, like, it's actually the science supports, but then if you layer theology next to it, I mean, if you just type in serving good works in the Bible, New Testament, like, made for good works, be ready to do good works, have good works ready for urgent needs in all times, faith without work. So, like, we've missed there is a part of this faith thing that is a work thing, but it's not a works to keep our faith, it's works because of our faith. It's that drastically different parallel. And for us, a lot of us have done, I would say, charity, but not philanthropy in the faith world.
Explain that.
So charity is just giving to a need. Philanthropy is removing the need forever.
Wow.
So if you were to put it this way, if you're a feeding organization, and God bless organizations feeding tens of thousands, millions of people, but if you're a feeding organization and someone says, hey, what's your goal to grow your org? An organization that feeds the hungry might say, well, we feed 10,000 kids a day. We want to feed 100,000. My goal, if I had an agency that fed people, would go, I'm trying to remove hunger forever. I don't want to be feeding less people. I want to create a solution that means those people don't need food anymore.
Yes.
Like, that's the difference between charity and philanthropy. That's the difference between serving, which is awesome, and providing a solution. And I think in the faith space, we've made, let's just be really honest. Sometimes we got to call foul on ourselves. We've made that framework very awkward. Like, the model is we'll serve you as long as you listen to this message we have to share with you before you get your soup or your socks or your Christmas turkey. Like, so it's literally like, I'm just being honest, and God bless our efforts, but it's a really it's a straight transactional. It's not relational.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you listen to what I have to say, then you can truly be loved by what I want to provide.
To me, it's like it's not evil. It's just the lowest level, right?
Exactly.
We're starting at the base level. What I wanted to say in the very beginning too is a lot of people, cause you helped clarify, like, hey, we're not here to bash the church. And the truth is like, no, I'm not bashing on my own family. It's my job as a leader in the church, which I am. I'm a leader in the church, to be able to take a look like a scientist would and to go, is what we're doing really effective? Because if we never ask that question, then we never come up with greater solutions, right? And yes, there are a lot of people that bash the church. And if you bash the church, but you don't love the church, if you're not a part of it, then it's like, that's one thing. But we're starting to ask questions for the purpose of solving. And we just believe that we've been put on the planet to bear the responsibility of solving these issues. Homelessness, that's not a government issue. To me, it's a body of Christ issue.
No problem. No problems actually. I mean, theory of change are being solved from the top down.
Yeah,
it's the bottom up.
The bottom up.
Like, it's not going to be a handout. It's not going to be a welfare check. It's not actually it's proven throughout history. They've never worked in any culture, in any society. We have to activate every individual within a community to serve and solve its community's problem, because that's actually where we see transformation.
But here's where I want to take men. We're starting with, and this we'll eventually get to, but like when we're talking about America's problem, right? As men, that's our problem. What we have done is we have typically separated ourselves from the war and went, I wasn't the one that threw a rock. I'm not the one that called the name. I'm not the one that evoked all this emotion. Like, that's not my battle. That my battle's over here. My battle's this thing. But the truth is, like, no, if you're a man and you're a believer, then these issues aren't something that you can turn your back on. You can't turn your back on homelessness. You can't turn your back on abortion. You can't turn your back. And listen, you can't fight every battle. I get that. But what you can do is you can show up as a man at your home.
Well, that is I mean, Jason, you triggered it. Like we did a data survey when we came to America to just say, hey, we don't want to deal with the worst of the fruit. We want to deal with the root that's creating homelessness, unjust incarceration, child welfare, poverty, corruption, violence. Like, this is like, what's the issue? And we actually hired data scientists to like
Yeah.
like we're just like, hey, we're now in a new century where we actually don't have to do outreach out of great ideas, but actually great information.
Yeah.
It's data driven. And we found out quickly, which is why we fell in love with you and have fallen in love with BraveCo, that the number one, this is statistical, guys, and I'm talking to guys, but I'm sure there's some wives
Yep.
listening, and I know the sensitivity around this, but the stats would say, not Jed would say, the number one issue facing America right now is fatherlessness. And that is not just an absent dad, but a present dad who's not there.
Yes.
And fatherlessness, when you actually look at it in culture, fatherlessness leads to broken homes. Broken homes lead to neglect and abuse. Neglect and abuse funnel hundreds of thousands of kids into an overburdened child welfare system. This is just one of the verticals they could go to, which is literally a statistical cesspool of the worst of the fruit. 40% of all foster youth that age out of the system will literally be homeless in 2 years, 40%. 56% of all female foster youth that age out of the system will be pregnant by 21 without a partner present, perpetuating fatherlessness. 60% of all foster youth have spent a night in prison. 60% of all males in the system were in the foster system. When you think about human trafficking, 100,000 boys and girls trafficked annually within our borders. I'm not even talking across. This is the stat.
So sad.
60,000 of them every year are connected to foster care homes or group homes. So yes, you sitting here going, man, the most important thing you could do is not build a business, is not get a trophy, is not win the race. The most important thing is not build a brand, is not get out. Let's literally show up every day intentionally and keep your kids and your families from ever being a part of those stats. And what we do know is when you model great families, more people want them.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we don't have the ability to say, hey, I don't agree with this type of marriage, or I don't agree with it. Like, just stop talking about what you don't agree with or what you don't like, or what you don't believe, and model a family that's enviable, a marriage that's enviable, a marriage that people go, I want that. And then the problem of what we should have or shouldn't have will actually take care of itself, because we want the best version of what this union, this family, what a fatherhood could actually represent. So yes, you guys are the most, I mean, I say it lightly, but are the most important, significant individuals on the planet right now. Because statistically, here's another stat, like if you forget the social stats around that, there's a stat that came out that said if there's a 10% increase in fatherlessness in any zip code, high net worth, doesn't have to be low income, any zip code, 10% increase, 1 year later, there'll be a 15% increase in violence within that zip code. It's facts. Any demographic, so it's like, yeah, you guys are fighting. And I want to jump. I do want to get to this thought
Do
around,
it. Yeah, go.
This just this humility piece. Cause I think, what I've learned is that, humility is not optional. There's some non-optional things in the kingdom. So no matter who you think you are or what you've done, just letting you know, it's actually non-optional, to consider not being humble. And the reason why we don't want to be humble is because we've always positioned it as a sign of weakness and not a sign of strength. But what I've learned, especially through my college days, let's get some sports in here and make this manly.
Come on, dude.
That the lower you were, the more leverage you had. So my coach, I played college football. I'll never forget. For those of you who are familiar with this sport, he used to say these words: "You're playing too high." You got to hear this, Jason. This would actually preach. I've retired, but you're playing too high. You're playing the game too high. And what that meant is you were standing upright and you were exposed instead of being at a lower position of strength. Wow. And when you think about wrestling, when you think about, anything that it's two forces of weight coming together, the reality is the more lower you are, the more leverage you have. It's actually the place of strength. So I have to win the war of pad level. So you think about it, when Jesus says the greatest of all is the servant of all, he's not placing you at the feet of people to be trampled by them. He is strategically placing you at the feet of people so you're at the position of strength, that you've out leveraged them for whatever opposition or adversary that would actually come against you. So everyone out there, I'm just telling you, humility, it might help you to know, I'm not just doing this because it's a God thing. It's actually strategically the best thing because it's a place of leverage. And in that framework, I think it might help the guys. It's new. I've never shared it anywhere, maybe like a few conversations, but I was recently on a trip. I was in Italy and just wanted to drop a beautiful country. And we're on I think it's like Walk of the Gods, Hike of the Gods, like top 5 hikes in the world, scenic, right? And it's so high up. And I was looking down, and as I was looking down, I saw myself falling. Like I just saw this fall. And then I hear God say these words, Jason, I sensed it. He said, the purpose of this life was not to climb to the top, but it was to fall to the bottom. This life is not a climb, it's a fall. And the hardest thing to do is not to hold on. The hardest thing to do is to let go and simply surrender everything. I shared this with some of the guys you've mentioned, and one of the guys is like, but what do we do? Like, there's got to be some work effort. Like, what do we do? And I go, do you know how hard it is on the fall down of surrendering and humbling yourself? And really that fall represents trust, right? It's not even just how do I get to the bottom? It's I trust the one I've surrendered and I've fallen into as I'm in this descent down. I go, the work you're going to do is not trying to grab onto something stable, something temporal, something earthly when you're actually falling. That is the work. The work is not trying to grab onto it. And so some of our new language, when we think about a nameless, faceless model, or how we go lower in our families or our businesses, is, we have this culture that's like, how do you get to the top?
Yeah.
What mountain do I need to climb next? And I'm not anti-conquering. Like, I'm not anti any of that. But the spiritual picture is not how do I get to the top? It's how quickly can I get to the bottom? So now the things when I say to my guys, when I leave them, I go, hey, I'll see you at the bottom. Like the standard I'll see you at the lowest spot. I'll see you at the surrendered spot. I'll see you at the sacrifice everything spot. And it doesn't change how we're wired. I just think we have, as you guys have said best forever, this is an upside down, inside out kingdom. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. It's so drastically different. And for those of you guys that are holding on, I would suggest letting go.
Let's get really practical with that, because I think that the practical side to me is, it's like, it's not just being surrendered. Like, a lot of guys will say, I'm surrendered because I'm not doing anything. Like, honestly, if you surrender nothing, it's not really that big of a sacrifice.
That's right.
And I'm not dogging anyone. I'm literally saying, like, no, listen, the surrender to me is, I walk into my house, right? And I don't want to, I want to check out. I've got a million things going on. I want to check out. My wife's feeling stressed out. Me surrendering is me literally letting go of what I want to do and diving into where they're at, like being fully present for what God has asked me to steward, right? It's not my will. I'm not coming home doing what I want to do. I'm not coming home with the old model of the dad is served, right? The dad's going to come home and it's nothing about who cooks dinner or whatever, but the old model was dad comes home and everybody serves dad. God's model is dad comes home and he's there to serve the environment, right? And that's where it's like, if you will make a difference, then that environment will naturally want to serve you. If you come in and you lay down your life for it, that environment will see you as valuable, right? And so I think when we get really practical on that, when I hear you say that, I'm like, yeah, it's show up to work on time. It's be super respectful. It's have the work environments goals in mind when you're working. Everything your hand finds to do it with all of your might, right? It's being diligent. It's not showing up. The Bible is very clear about, not to worry about tomorrow and how to scrap by. But like, if you start to steward what you've been given with heaven in mind, then it changes your posture, because you're not in it for what you can get out of it, but in it for what you can give. And I remember when I was young, I've shared this story a lot, but when I was young, I remember telling my dad, like, I don't want to go to youth group anymore, right? Youth group's so boring and the music sucks and the worship's terrible and the preaching was bad. And my dad said, this was, I was 13, and my dad said, son, it's...
And Pastor Chris was the youth pastor. It was also awkward.
No. He said, son, it sounds like you're going for yourself. And I said, I think I am. I thought he was saying it's good to go for yourself. And I said, I think I am going for myself, Dad. And he said, son, going to youth group for yourself is the lowest level of living for a believer. It's the bottom. So going there to get something out of it, that's the bottom. He actually at 13, he said, that's why you don't enjoy it. You don't enjoy it because you're going there to get something for you. And he said, son, you have what people need. It's your job to go and to give. It's your job to show up and find that need and meet that need. So people always ask, like, how did you learn counseling? And it's like, dude, I was 13. I was 13 and I was on a mission. I realized it changed everything in my life when I realized the goal isn't to be served. The goal is to serve. And in serving, right, God takes care of my needs. And so, man, I just think that that's such a profound model that you guys have grabbed a hold of and ran with. Can you tell me a little bit about Houston? How did Houston go?
Yeah, man, it was, I think in the combined framework, where we're at, we had both cities, 40,000 volunteers. Houston, we served, I believe it was 72,000 families, which were actually served. It was just amazing. This framework of, I put it this way. Sometimes, our model is everyone can do good. Right. And I think one of the challenges is like, we created a model that only the people who have a certain belief system like us can do good. Like we're going to be the server. Like we're the great white hype. Let's just be honest, and hope. And you're the big bad problem that we're trying to solve. Right. And I think what I loved about watching this model of, faith person, non-faith person, straight person, LGBTQ represented, like Catholic, Mormon, like literally, all ages, all races, all people showing up, is when you are being generous and serving and loving, you're the most like the creator. Mm-hmm. And when you only let people that have your same faith do that action with you, then you're robbing the rest of humanity from experiencing the very nature of the creator living through them as the creation. It actually is activating that God muscle inside of them to do good. We had a fun time with Tim McGraw and Parker McCollin and Toby Nwingwe and Faruko, and it's just amazing who shows up. But no, Houston is, I think right now we have 365 faith communities that have adopted long-term initiatives. This is how we solve problems long-term. We have like a living movement. This fall, we're launching this incredible No Family Left Behind program in 20 schools, 20 pilot schools. We have an MOU to go to all 471 schools in Houston, which is wild, and do a bunch of stuff we can't say everywhere, but it's pretty amazing. We're going to give 5,000 kids the ability to see this fall. So I know Houston, for us, we're not running to a starting or finish line. It's a starting line. So I'm actually kind of telling you the stuff that's happened since Houston in Houston, because there's actually a movement taking place, Jason. Like it's wild. And when I think about these city activations, we really see them as like spontaneous order. Spontaneous order is the theory that says it snows, there's no footprints, there's no path. Someone walks in the snow first. Then someone else follows that footprint. Then there's now a path made, and suddenly everyone's going down that direction, but no one said go this way. It's called spontaneous order. And when we think about what we've done in the city, it's like we've actually taken leaders and city officials and faith communities and businesses in this walk in the snow first. Like, guys, let's go this way, to loving everyone, to bottom-up empowerment, solution-based transformation. Like, let's go this way. And if I could tell you, Jason, what's happening now from individual orgs, faith communities that are just following in this path of, hey, we're going to step up and adopt a refugee crisis now. We're going to be a part of poverty eradication. Like that's wild, like what's happening in the aftermath. And, the biggest gift that you guys are getting, that you guys are giving, is the same thing that happened when Bannister broke the 4-minute mile for the very first time, right? Scientists said that it wasn't possible forever for a human being to break a 4-minute mile on a run. And then all of a sudden Bannister does it. In the year that Bannister does it, several other runners do it because they realize what's possible. And the gift that you guys are pouring out is, okay, what you thought was impossible is now possible. It's like, and not only that, but we're starting you out with momentum. So the partnerships and the momentum and the belief that we can do it. That's everything, right? Like that's the whole thing is once I can see what's possible, because for so many people, all that they've ever seen was the impossible. We see marriages that are broken. We see fathers that aren't at home. We see, kids that were mean to me when I grew up, and all, life just feels really impossible. And you feel like you're on your own. But all of a sudden, even as a pastor in a faith community, like the faith community is a tough community because it can even be dog eat dog in the faith community world. And I know this in the men's world. Like I was sitting down with a very prominent men's leader, very, very prominent men's leader. And I told him, I said, man,
we need to get like the men's community together. Like we need to like unify the men's community because we're all trying to do the same thing. And I wasn't saying, that we all need to do the same program, but we all need to like unify. And he looked at me and said, it'll never happen. It will never happen. And because of
that's not true.
I know.
I'd say that's not true.
But I'm saying that's what we face, right? So what's so cool is you guys have, if you can do it once, you can do it again. And once people taste once people taste what unity feels like,
that's right.
Everyone's willing to do it for no credit. Because the success of what we can do better, what we can do together is so much greater than what I can do alone. And dude, what you guys have opened up for communities is freaking phenomenal. It's exceptional.
You for the people that have a challenge with unity, because man, I know a lot of times unity looks like uniformity, right? And it's not all looking the same, saying the same, being the same. It's the same spirit, right? It's the same mind. I just don't think, for those listening that share, the faith we share, I don't think Jesus is going to return with his prayers unanswered.
Yeah.
I don't think he's coming back. Like if there's any prayers being answered, it's his, right? Like he's asked himself, right? And he's got a few prayers before he goes to the cross, carries the weight of humanity, the pain, the shame, past, present, and future sins on his shoulders, ends it once and for all. Before that, he has a few conversations that are going to be left to be recorded in the ancient scriptures that will be fully God and fully man talking. Just think about it. He's got 3 moments left to pray. And this is where it's fully God talking and fully man talking. And Jesus prays one of these prayers, which when you think about what he could have prayed, he didn't pray, hey, I pray there never be sickness, there never be disease. He never prayed, I never pray there never be poor or homeless, there'd be no infirmity. He never said, I pray there wouldn't be wars or famines or crisis. Think of all the stuff he could have said, I pray this. He didn't say any of those things, Chase. He sits there and he goes, man, this is going to be read and studied forever. And I got a few things as a man to pray and also pray to God. And he says, and what I'm going to pray is that these people would be one, just like you and I, out of all the things he asked for that he could have, endless resources for the church.
Wild.
Just think about peace in every government. He literally goes, no, you know what I want to pray? I prayed that you become one. I pray that my prayer is that you would become one, just like me and the Father are one, which means any theology, any action, any ministry model, any methodology that we have that perpetuates disunity or simply allows it is actually saying, I'm okay with delaying the return of Christ. Like that action is actually going, I'm good with you not coming back. Wow. Because you're not coming back unless these prayers are being answered. Wow. And so when I think about, unity's possible, he wouldn't pray for it unless he saw it actually being answered. Right? It's like and as you guys know, answered prayer is the joy of the believer. Answered prayer is the joy of our Savior. That's the fact. It's not just our prayers being answered, it's his prayers being answered, which means we have an absolute mandate to find ways to strive in every way to actually unite, to serve each other, to love each other. And it's not optional for me. Like, trust me, it is hard. It is ugly. It is message. As you guys know, for those married, that is uniting with one different person. Imagine 1,000, imagine 40,000, imagine, I think it was in the last 2 campaigns, 1,268 unique organizations like that all partnered, and 80% of those were faith communities. And it's like, no, but we gotta be willing to do the things that no one else is doing. And what I love, what we're also saying is when you as a man go first in the snow, it means other people are following you. And what I love about this moment, Jason, what you guys have been creating is one thing we've learned throughout, I think, America and the journey of pursuing the impossible, especially if we think about faith communities. It's same with when Elon was going to Mars. When he actually started the journey of becoming an interplanetary species, multiplanetary species in his mind, he actually thought that the entire space industry had lost the passion for the pursuit. He was wrong. He's admit this on all these podcasts. He goes, I literally walked in there thinking these guys have no passion anymore. These guys have just no passion for this. So he thought his advantage, his comparative advantage was I have passion for this again. I'm going to ignite passion. What he found out there was not a will problem. There was endless passion. Everyone just had concluded there was no way.
Wow.
They had given up on the possibility, which you just said, like some guys don't know. They've given up on the possibility. When I think about what the church wants to do, we don't have a passion problem. We don't have a will problem. We have a way problem. When I think about men on this podcast, the reality is what I love about this podcast is there's men that saying, there's no way my marriage is going to be restored. There's no way I'm going to kick pornography. There's no way I'm going to get out of that addiction. There's no way I'm going to stop cutting myself, hurting myself. There's no way I'm getting off those scripts. There's no way I'm getting out of this debt. There's no way I'm getting out of prison, whatever that, there's no way it's going to happen. And it's like everyone on here is listening because they have a passion to be different, to be better, to be made new, to be changed, to be healthy, to be whole. They have a passion for it, but they didn't realize there's actually a possibility for it. And at the end of the day, Jason, what you're doing, what I love about BraveCo and the men listening, is it's unlocking the fact that it can happen. Guess what? To the gentleman who said men's ministry won't, well, I'm so sorry, man. It's not biblical and Jesus prayed for it. There's actually a way. Hey, you're sitting here today and you hate your wife and she hurt you or whatever that narrative looks like, and you don't know how you'll forgive, how you will love, how you will care again. Well, guess what? There's people that are going to talk to you that are in this community. There is a way. There's people that are sitting here saying, man, I've messed up in every marriage I've had. I've been the craziest playboy ever. I don't ever think I'm going to be able to stick to one, be pure. Guess what? There's people here in this community that are going to let you know there's a way. If you have a will, there is going to be a way that God can help you get to that desired destination. And that's why you're tuning in. Sorry, I got a little heated.
Dude, I love it because that is what's happening, right? It's so cool to watch a guy come in and all he's ever seen his whole entire life is his failures, his father's failures, and what he can't achieve and accomplish. And then through banding together with a bunch of men, all of a sudden he feels the strength and the empowerment that can happen through a group when you're honest, when you're vulnerable, when you're humble, right? When you don't care, when your ego matters less to you than getting breakthrough. And then as these guys start to heal, the other men's journey next to them matters more than even their own journey. And that's when they start to really heal, right? Is because they're not just showing up for themselves. At first, they just show up for themselves. But they really start to heal when they start to show up for the other man. And man, I've just watched it time and time. In 3 years now, we've been running discipleship groups and walking with men on their journey and seeing what happens when you go all in on breakthrough. And it's profound. It really is profound. I wanted to ask you just one more thing. We're gonna end here soon, but it's not an easy thing. Most people will never see what it costs to carry, to be a catalyst in a movement like this and like yours, because what most people don't understand is that as soon as you get out of the charismatic Christian world or whatever flavor Christianity, Baptist world, or right, as soon as you step outside of that and you start pulling in entities from the outside and partnering together, there's a whole ton of scrutiny, opinions, judgment. And honestly, it's what we see Christ face, right? Like, oh, he's sitting in there with the tax collectors and he's hanging out with those guys and everyone's like, whatever, dude, those people are unclean. But you guys have, what you've done is, it's cost you a lot. It's cost you a lot from your own, from the own brand and flavor that you've come from. How have you dealt with that personally? And I'm not going to have you like, whatever. I mean, you can go as deep as you want to that, but I know that here's why it matters. It matters because I think it's really important that other men see men doing something that costs them. And there's a lot of men that have left their family because their family was toxic, and the scrutiny that's come from that has been very painful. There's a lot of families that have left relationships, a lot of men that have left relationships because the relationships were toxic. There's a lot of men who are like Elon in some ways, who are pioneering, and you don't understand the weight of the pressure of doing that until you're in it. And I think that a lot of guys get really jaded and burned out. Even sometimes being a pastor can be that. You get jaded and burned out because sometimes when you do that, right? When you start to lead, man, everybody's a Monday quarterback, and it's really hard to deal with the effects of being constantly scrutinized, constantly judged, your motives. Like, you can give stuff away and people will judge your motive. You cannot take any credit and people will judge your motive. And I just really am curious, like genuinely curious, how have you guys handled that?
Oh man, I'm trying to think of the best way to answer it. And I don't even know all of it's theologically
It
correct.
don't
I was
matter to
talking
me.
to a pastor of you know him. I just don't, I was talking to him this week, and I was like, "Hey, does this ever go away?" Like, and it's not the end. People that are opposition to you or enemy attacking you is very easy to handle. When it's family, that's why I'm like, we started this thing with like, "Hey, can we stop the friendly fire?" Like, there's a bunch of people trying to love people and love Jesus, and we're attacking us. Like, we got enough things coming against us. But I was basically talking about it. And I was like, does this go away? You're older, and it's like, nah, I don't think it does. I mean, I don't have that answer, and I wish it does. I do think, the greatest things in life will cost you something.
Yes.
And we have a generation, and unfortunately, it's penetrated all sectors of society that wants everything as easy and comfortable and convenient as possible. Like, that's the fact. Like, think about it. We want to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. We want, to get rich quick. We want fame overnight. We want cheat sheets instead of study guides. We want handouts instead of hard work. We want welfare instead of a job. We want our destiny at our discount. Like, that's what we want. But what I've learned is greatness never goes on sale. There's never a cheap version of it, And so when it comes to these things, there is a cost, and it's not even like you endured the cost for the reward. But let's not also forget there's actually a massive reward. Is for the joy sent before him, he endured the cross, right? So the point of the cross was not discomfort or pain or sacrifice. The point of the cross, that was a part of the cross. The point of the cross was new life, resurrection. So I think you go through that discomfort to get it, to get to that other side. I do feel like there's moments that have been very heavy. I think for me, and everyone listening would know, it's not when someone says something about you that's true, but it's also mean.
Yeah.
It's when says something about you that's completely false and they know you. It's people thinking you're someone you're not, or you've changed your values or your motives because of a model or a method. We've had a lot of people not like the way we're doing it, and let us know. And how dare you partner with that person, or how dare you help that community, or how dare, like, it's wild what people are doing. And
I know because they talk to me about it. They go, they had Justin Bieber out there and another guy that and it's like, my God. Listen,
I'm not even getting into this, but the great news is just like, I think the challenge is when you want people to know who it's like, that's not who you really are. But I do think I remember talking to a great leader in our nation, and it was when this was going on, like just people being like, what are you doing? How dare you? And how dare you use these people? And who are you? And I remember this great leader, everyone would know him. He said, he sat back in his chair. He's got a deep, deep voice, and he goes, "Well, this is your coming out party. Welcome to your bar mitzvah." I'll never forget it. And he was like, "Welcome to your, like, you're actually, like, this is your coming out party." And I'm like, "What, are us getting publicly attacked, and our friends throwing rocks at us publicly and private? Like, that is it?" And he's like, this is part of the barrier of admission. I don't know any leader, I don't think you do, that hasn't, if it's a church, hasn't had a church split, or someone stab a back, a business has a business partner rob them, break an NDA. Like, it's actually a sign that you're onto something. So it doesn't make it less painful. I think dealing with that, spirit of offense, it doesn't make it less painful, but you just know you're onto something when people are going after that. And I think it's, at the end of the day, I want to try to understand. I think I've been in this season where the more I understand others, the more I understand myself. The more I understand myself, the more I understand others. I want to be quick to learn and quick to listen. And I want the rebuttal, the correction. And we believe there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors, as the Bible says, which means, as we've told people who don't agree, you're not the only person we're talking to either. We got about, 40 guys around us that are giving us a 360 perspective, and 10% of you don't love it, but 90% of you do. And that's the wisdom of perspective.
It is. I think at the end of the day, you have to be okay with not being right 100% of the time, but knowing that your motives and your judgments were as sound as possible. And that, I think for me, that's how I sleep a lot at night, is if I know that my motive and my judgments were as clear as possible, then listen, I can't carry the pressure of doing this perfect every time. I just can't, because there's so many decisions, even now, like messages that I preached 10 years ago, I look back on and go, I don't know if I fully agree with that. Right. Like,
I know,
I'm not sure that everything I said there was perfect. And, the way that I raised my kids, I was in a counseling session today, with a therapist, a child therapist, because my daughters, were getting some help for her. And she gently explained to me, the way that you have learned parenting, it doesn't fully work. And I'm like, oh, when you tell me, like when you actually explain it, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's great. It's just how I was raised, right? Like it's just, this model doesn't work for what I'm doing with my child. But as a dad, like, and as a leader and as a husband and as a father, there's going to be a lot of times when we look back and go, man, I wish I could redo that one. Right. That's the grace. That's where you need God's grace.
It's also, Jace, like when I think to your question, because I don't know if I answered it well, it's a heavy one. You can feel it on the thing. I think for me, it starts off with how, you define success, and man, this is a great conversation for every male, every human. How you just define success determines what matters, what you measure, and what you move towards. Wow. Like that's a fact. Yeah. Like we are wired, especially as a male, we are a glory-driven culture that's literally trophies, accolades. So how I define success determines what matters, what I measure, and what I move towards. For me and my wife, we define, I believe this should be the definition of success for every follower of Jesus. For me and my wife, the definition of success has one word, and it's simply obedience.
Wow.
It's obedience. That's how we define success. God's not going to say, well done when you get to heaven, good and famous servant, well done, good and financially blessed servant. He's going to say, well done, good and faithful, good and obedient servant. And so for me, this is the good news. No matter where you're at in life, no matter what you're like, man, maybe the stuff we're talking about is intimidating you, or like, man, this is bigger than, like, we're same human beings like you. We put our shoes on just like you. And the way that we got here was simply going, God, what do you want to do? And let's do it. Like, and here's the crazy thing. You could be reducing from a job to less hours because God wants you to be at home and it looks like you're backing away from your career. But if he asks you to do that, then you were successful that day. You could be serving at a local church, or, you could be serving at a charity, or you could simply be saying, hey, I'm going to wait till marriage. That's success. Like if God gave you this, like, the reality is if you are simply obeying God today, right now, you are massively, irrationally successful. That means you have the ability to be a crazy daily success simply by following the Father in small, reluctant steps of obedience. And that's what everyone gets. But if you define it as something else, man, it will be a tragedy to see what you measure, what matters to you, and what you move towards. And so when I think about, hey, there's going to be haters, there's going to be opposition, there's going to be friendly fire, there's going to be people that just they're humans, man, doing human things, flawed and fractured and failing and faulty. They're going to do that stuff. The great news is I go, wait, was success for me human celebration? Or was success for me, did I obey God? And there's times when you get in a boat to get to the other side in obedience to God, and you find yourself in a storm in the middle of his will. Think about it. In the middle, it's like, what does it look like success? Does it look like, wait a second, we can't even get there. We're stuck. Now we got opposition. I thought I was in your will. And just because you're following Jesus doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Yeah. It just means you're going to get through it, right? So I think it's significant, like no matter who's hating, attacking, just ask yourself one question every day. What does God ask me to do today? What's the last thing he asked me to do? Start there and do that. And if you're obeying him, changing careers, changing business, walking away from something, starting something, stopping something, if you're literally taking that simple step of obedience, you are a crazy success. And eventually you'll have tons of successes of simply obeying God, which builds a record and a history and a narrative of what's possible when small-minded people in fractured and failing bodies simply say, I choose to believe and have faith in him.
Jed, you're a beast. You're an absolute savage. Listen, we've got like 2 minutes left on the card. And to me, when, again, starting from the very beginning, why I love to bring guys like you on is because you're an everyday guy. You're not, it's like when I look at the Dominic and Jed and all you guys, I think like you guys are just guys you're just everyday guys who have followed the call of God on your life and been obedient, but you've been asking different questions and been willing to step out and take risks that, man, most people aren't willing to do. And to me, like, your journey, it's not like God has blessed you with this unique thing that he hasn't blessed other men with. Is like the Lord has an invitation for all of us to step into a greater thing, right? And for you, that may be you lived in poverty your whole life, and now God wants to bring you into prosperity. It could be, your marriage was a mess, and man, he wants to bring you into a whole marriage, and your kids were disconnected, and now he wants to bring unity. Like the Lord has an invitation for us in, like we said in the beginning, if you've never seen it, it feels like it's impossible. But when we hear stories and see people and get around a culture, like that's what happens when people get around like Bethel's cultures, all of a sudden they go like, oh my gosh, healing's possible. And they pull on God in a different way that they've never pulled on it. The prophetic's possible. And all of a sudden they're opening up their ears in a way that they're creating expectation, which now there's a need, and God's there to meet that need. He's there to be present with them. And so I really feel the grace, honestly, for men to look at the area of their life that they need to dream more, they need to believe more, they need to risk for. What am I willing to risk and lose? What is it? Not like it's that question that you asked earlier, right? It's like not what would I do if I couldn't fail? What would I do that's worth failing for? That's the question, man. And running 100% whole heart after that. Jedediah, would you pray for us in 30 seconds?
Yeah. Jesus, we just love you, and we just thank you. You've been so kind. You've been so gracious. We thank you that no matter where people are tuning in from, method, device, listening, you're there. You're in their moment. You see their need. You see their hurt. You see their pain. You see the problem. You see the process. You see the challenge. You see the promises unfulfilled. And you are doing what only you can do. You're making a way when there's no way. You're opening a door. You're removing a lid. You're shaking away an addiction. You're breaking chains that have kept us bound. And I just pray right now that everyone listening would experience your love, your grace, and your freedom. Right now, Jesus, open our hearts, open our eyes, and give us a clear idea of what you desire and have designed for us next. We love you, Jesus, so much. And thank you that men and man were your idea. And we get to be one of your incredible ideas that live on this planet every day. We love you, Jesus.
Amen. All right, BraveCo week. BraveCo week. All right, BraveCo men, this week, go out and get after it. We will see you next week on the BraveCo podcast. Take care. Hey, BraveCo men. Hopefully you loved this week's episode. Listen, if you have not subscribed to our podcast, you are already behind. Go ahead and click right here to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have not watched last week's episode, you can click right here and watch last week's episode. And listen, if you want to upgrade your wardrobe, you can check out some of our new hats that we have in stock and all our other swag. Go to braveco.org and you can look at our store there. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.